Welcome back to the channel. I'm going to go over servicing my G today, which will entail changing the engine oil and filter, checking the brake fluid, changing it if necessary, also checking the coolant and changing that if necessary. Now, as far as the transmission and rear differential, I did that service recently. However, I'll go over it. That way, if you're interested, you could do it on your own. Now, talking about the G, it's one of the cars that I just don't mind working at all because it just isn't as time consuming as the newer cars. It's fairly straightforward. There aren't a ton of under trays that I have to remove to get everything going, which is kind of nice. And it just has one drain plug on the bottom of the engine and one drain plug on the oil tank reservoir. So let's go ahead and get into it and see how it goes. Once the G is up in the air, I'll start by pulling both of the drain plugs. First, the oil tank, which I'll use an 8mm hex, pull it down, let that drain. Then use that same 8mm hex to go ahead and pull the plug on the bottom of the engine. That's a great time as everything's draining to go ahead and grab your oil sample, if you so desire. Let it drain out completely. After everything is done, then replace the copper sealing washer. Go ahead and send both plugs back up and torque them down to 45 Newton meters. After that, you go ahead and bring the car down. Once I'm on top, I'll disconnect the ECS valve from the wiring harness, then slide it to the right and move it out of the way. That will give me access to the oil filter housing. Now, of course, there's some sort of special Lambo tool. I myself just use a filter strap. I line it with duct tape to protect it because, of course, that is a plastic housing. Then I use a 3/8 universal, connect that down with a ratchet, and remove the housing. The housing comes out fairly easy. You're able to snake it through everything that's down there. Then once on top, you can kind of get a good look at the filter and how it goes in there. After the filter housing's out, I will go ahead and move it over to the toolbox here and remove the filter element from the housing. Now, I will caution you, be kind of careful when you do that. I've seen several things happen. One, I've seen the tabs in the housing break before, and I've also seen the housing get damaged by someone prying too hard. So you'll notice how I pull the element is I use a plastic scraper, non-marring, and then I just kind of carefully pry it up. That pops out the element. The great thing about elements like this I like is they can be inspected without having to cut the filter open. So you can take a look in there, see if you see anything. Obviously, if you see metal shavings or any remnants or debris, that's probably not the greatest sign. You can see here I have a brand new oil filter from Lambo. There's the part number. And the great thing is it comes with a replacement O-ring for the filter housing. I just used a pick, pulled that off, put some engine oil on the new O-ring and installed it on the filter housing. Then after that, I carefully lined up the filter element, put it in. And there's another O-ring on the top side there that I lubricated with engine oil as well. After that, you're ready to go back in. Everything is just done in the reverse order. Then maneuver the filter and filter housing back into position, send them down, tighten it, put the ECS valve into position as well, reconnect it, and you're ready to fill with the engine oil. With all my lab testing through the engine oil through the years, I've had good luck with Castrol 540 Edge. I use it in all the Lambos, and any vehicle that has a 540 spec, it's usually my oil of choice. So I'll fill that. Now, the service manual tells you to potentially fill, I think, like 6 liters and then top it after that. I measure everything coming out, so I know that it's going to take 10 quarts to do it. So I will now fill with the 10 quarts. Once the engine oil's in, you're all ready to fire. Now, I usually crank it to fire 3 times just to prime the system. Then after that, I let it run, make sure engine oil pressure looks good, check for any leaks, let everything get up to desired temp. Once you get the engine up to 70 to 80 degrees Celsius, then bring it up to 2000 RPM for 2 minutes. Shut the engine off, pull the dipstick, wipe it clean, send it back into the tank, check your level, and if you're looking good, you're ready to roll. Next up on the list is the brake fluid. Now, many shops just want to change the brake fluid every year. It's been through my experience that becomes quite the chore for me. But what I found is for a small investment, you can buy this tool off of Amazon, which is a brake fluid tester. That seems to be the best way to go, at least for me. Now, what I'll do is I'll check the brake fluid for any moisture levels and of course do a visual. If everything looks good, then I will go ahead and just let it roll. My findings are it's very rare that in a year the brake fluid has actually been contaminated with moisture. I'm oftentimes able to go much longer than that. But of course you should do what you feel most comfortable with. So as we take a look here, we see that the brake fluid is fine. Moving forward to the transmission and rear differential, as I said before, I changed mine recently, but you can see where the plug is to check the level. And if you're going to go ahead and do the change, a 14mm hex will allow you to go ahead and pull the plug and drain. Once you drain, you'd want to replace the sealing washer, then go ahead and send it back up and torque it down. Before going up and filling, I will mention something about lubricant. My trans in the manual was very good when I initially got the car, but when I did the first change, I used 75W90 as I was told by Lamborghini of Orange County. The problem is that it didn't feel right. Second gear almost was grinding. Now, if I had an E gear, I would never know that because I couldn't feel it. So I did a lot of research, and what I ended up finding out was that they actually recommended an Audi gear lubricant. So I switched to that. You can see right here the part number of what I'm using, and that pretty much cleared up all the issues and made it like it was when it was new. I don't know if any of you have had that problem, but that might be something you want to check out. Then I use an 8mm socket to pull the bolt that holds the filter in place. I've been very fortunate. I have never seen the filter have any issues or any contaminants in it. So I pull it out, clean it, then send it back in. Obviously, you know, if you see something in there, that's not a good sign. Then you're ready to go ahead and go on top and fill. Next up is to go ahead and pull the fill plug. Before adding oil, I would replace the seal on the fill plug and also the seal on the level check plug. Then you can go ahead and start adding the gear lubricant. Once the oil starts coming out of the level hole, you can replace the plug down below, then go back up on top, replace that plug, and you're ready to go. As far as the engine coolant, I recommend checking it before you move to change it. Most dealers and shops are going to want to go ahead and change that for you. But what I use is a test kit system with strips. That allows me to see what condition the coolant is in. So I will test the G coolant to see how it comes out. We'll go ahead and put the test strip into the reservoir for 2 seconds. Pull it out, shake it, and then let it sit for 40 seconds. Then cross-reference it here on the chart. You can take a good look at the information it gives you, and this gives you a good indication of what condition the coolant is in. I put the test strip in the coolant reservoir for 2 seconds and then waited the 40 seconds. As we take a look here at the chart here, we bring it down. The mix is good at 50%. We go over to the reserve alkalinity. It passes easily at the 6.6, and we go to the acidity alkalinity. And 9 is a pass, but it looks more like an 8 to me. So everything looks good. Now, as you can see from the test, the coolant condition in the G is fine. So I'm gonna go ahead and let mine roll. Now for you, if you want to go ahead and change it, it's not that difficult. I will recommend that before you source the Audi blue coolant. Sometimes it's difficult for me to find it, but I would recommend you have that ready to go. If you're gonna do it, pull the cap off the reservoir. Then go down below, find the coolant pipes. You'll use a 6mm hex to pull the 2 plugs. Pull them, drain, replace the seals, send them back up, and then of course you'll fill the reservoir. What I really recommend is measuring how much actually comes out. That way when you fill, you know you don't have any problems. And if you start filling and don't use that amount, then you would definitely want to try some different strategies. A few things that I found are, one is that I could leave it overnight. That actually helps out a lot, and the air works its way out of the system, then you can top it off. If that still doesn't work, the other thing that I'll do at times is go ahead and fire it and let it run a bit to try and get the air out of the system. But as long as you measure what you took out and that goes back in, check your level, close it up, should be good to go. Another thing to address when you're underneath is take a quick look at your dry belt for the alternator. I noticed mine's cracking, so I will need to order a new one from Lambo and go over the change potentially in an upcoming video. Well, my friends, there you have it. I've completed my service on the G. Everything is looking good, so I'm going to go ahead and close everything up, head out, and enjoy the G. And I hope all of you have a great weekend.